Morrowind is a truly expansive RPG from the early 2000s, but can we beat it at level 1? Today we join the Hammer.
And these are not the Hammer. The Hammer is my penis.
On his adventure into Red Mountain, where he will find Kagernak's tools and use them to destroy Lorkhan's heart. So in order to do this, we need to do a few things. First, we need to build our character. We need to tell the Hammer what he's good at and what he's going to be focused on. Obviously, being named the Hammer, I want to focus on blunt weapons, specifically two-handed blunt weapons. Big hammer, big damage, that kind of thing. This will also help us use one of Kagernak's tools, that being Sunder, since it is also a blunt weapon. I take a few other support skills in minor skills like Short Blade. I also plan on using light armor, so I'm going to have heavy and medium armor taking up spots so that I don't level those armors by accident. I do want to be able to complete this at level 1 and not accidentally level myself to 2. I will be abusing the healing while sleeping feature of this game, so accidentally getting 10 skill ups is going to be devastating. We also get to name our class, so I name my class Hammer Enthusiast. So after picking our class skills, we need to leave Sedinin and head north, where we find Teriel falling out of the sky. We need to take his scrolls of Vicranian flight and utilize them for ourselves. Using one scroll, we can bound leagues ahead and end up a lot closer to our destination than we were before. Early on, I was only using one scroll to try to get one jump into Ghostgate. However, I realized I could just use the jump from when I had to use the scroll to break my fall. This will work because as long as you have a level of 125 acrobatics, you are completely immune to fall damage. So casting the Scroll of Vicranian Flight just before you land your jump makes you immune to the fall damage that you would normally receive. Practicing the jump is really important. There are 2 Dwarven strongholds that each hold one of Kagernak's tools. One holds Sunder and one holds Keening. I want to end up at the location of Sunder first, which would be Veminal. We'll get to that later. Right now, I'm just practicing my jumps. So enjoy a myriad of attempts playing at however fast I decide. Probably 10 times speed, so it's not too fast. And any of my attempts that are particularly funny, I have slowed down so you can enjoy them. So the second thing I'm going to need is a weapon. I need something to help me defeat these monsters that I'm going to be running into. As you saw earlier, I stole the limeware platter out of the Census and Excise offices so that I could have a little bit of cash. So I thought I should find a steel warhammer because it has the correct balance of not being too expensive and being pretty effective at taking things down. However, I went through 3 separate towns, Sedinin, Balmora, and Caldera, and not a single vendor sold a steel warhammer. Varric Germain in Caldera has a Dwarven warhammer that is enchanted, but it's just a little bit too expensive for me, so I can't quite buy it. I have to get a little bit creative with my weapon of choice, and I figure I should go somewhere a little bit off the beaten path. Granted, it's somewhere that I would need to go to during the main quest, but I'm going to be skipping the main quest for this video. So I start to make my way towards Narmak, and as a side note, I really like the way that there are these little locations that are totally unmarked in Morrowind, and you find something new every time you play. There's this wrecked ship and a chest with a silver longsword. I've never seen this before. I've also never taken this direction towards Tlaod. And there's also a pirate ship that I had no idea was here. I find a scroll of Ondisi's unhinging under the deck in one of the crates. The feller there doesn't like that I took from him, but I don't really care, I just run past him and leave. But I do make it to Tlaod without any trouble, really, and I pay for a boat over to Narmak. Once I'm in Narmak, I simply head north of town a little bit and enter a sea cave that normally houses Dagoth Gairs. But because I'm below level 3, the only inhabitants of this sea cave are dreamers. This certain sea cave I'm talking about is Ilunibi. It's a 6th house base that you're normally charged with clearing out during the main quest, those being the Fists of Randagulf. One glove grants plus 20 strength, and the other glove grants plus 20 agility. I also want to be here because there is a very large hammer that weighs 75 pounds, but it is a 6th house bell hammer. I normally pick these up in my playthrough because they're worth 5,000 gold, and I can perfectly sell one to Creeper without having to shuffle any other stuff around. But I'll be using this as a main weapon in this playthrough. So now that we have properly prepared, we can make our way into Red Mountain. I decided to give a try to just jump straight from where I was towards Red Mountain, and as luck would have it, I landed pretty much exactly where I needed to be. Just a little bit past Veminil, but that's okay. I can walk down the path and up into the fortress. Veminil itself was pretty challenging to get through. Upon entering, I pretty much immediately had to fight a Greater Bonewalker. This is a stronger enemy that normally doesn't spawn until later in the game. However, this is a very end game part of the game, so it's not surprising to see these types of enemies walking around. They have a really annoying spell that damages your strength. Most things will drain your stats, but this enemy will actually damage it. The difference between damage and drain will expire and your stats will go back to normal at the end of the duration of the spell. Damage will reduce your stat and it will not revert back. So it is imperative that I do not get hit by this creature's spell. The other enemy that I run into that gives me a little bit of trouble are Ascended Sleepers. They're not very strong melee combatants, although being at level 1, they still do plenty of damage to me. Their spells are very dangerous. If I get hit with one of their spells, my health will get ticked towards 0, guaranteed. They have a poison spell and a fire spell, as well as an ice spell. However, because I'm a Nord, they never use the frost spell. The spells also have an AoE, so even if they hit the wall next to me, I can still be affected by the spell. So what I need to do is sort of buffer the load zone. What I'll do is enter the room, wait until they start casting their spell, and leave. They expend the magicka, the spell fizzles, and then I re-enter the room and repeat the process. Once they run out of magicka, they start running towards you, and usually they have just enough magicka to cast one final spell. It's a paralysis spell, which really sucks because, like I said, they're a little bit bad at their melee, but because I'm level 1, it doesn't matter. So they do some pretty good damage to me. But in the end, it only takes a couple strikes from the hammer to incapacitate them permanently. The Ash Vampires are also rather difficult. They have a pretty strong melee attack, and their spells usually do quite a bit of damage if they connect. They don't have nearly as much magicka as the Ascended Sleepers, so they can usually only cast their spell somewhere between 2 and 6 times. So, as long as I can dodge their spells, I'm in a pretty good spot, because then they just need to run around behind me and try to melee me. The first Ash Vampire I fight, I tried to go around and down, but there were other enemies there that made it too difficult to access them. So I just jumped straight down into the pit they were in and fought them. Luckily, Ash Vampires are affected by normal weapons because the 6th House Bellhammer is a normal weapon. It's not enchanted, it's not an ebony weapon or a Daedric weapon, so it is classified as a normal weapon. As you can see, it only took a few tries. This Ash Vampire holds both Sunder and a very useful amulet for later. The amulet gives us Levitate for 30 seconds. With everything in Veminil secured, we leave and make our way to Odrysal. Now, on the way to Odrysal, I thought maybe I could drop into Kogorun to defeat the Ash Vampire that sits at the exit, but it was a little bit too difficult. What I should have done is just taken out the Corpus Stalkers that were preventing me from resting outside, and then tried again while I had full fatigue. But I didn't really think it was worth my time anymore. I didn't remember exactly what the belt he drops does, so I just abandoned the idea and made my way over to Odrysal. Odrysal was a little bit different than Veminil. It was a lot smaller, so you might think that makes it a little bit easier, and in a way it does. However, the enemy that is sort of guarding the Ash Vampire from the outside of the room is a Golden Saint. Golden Saints are immune to normal weapons because they are a high-level Daedra. The only weapon I have that can affect them right now is, unfortunately, a Silver Staff. The Silver Staff doesn't do nearly enough damage to take it down, so I just try to take a different path to get to the Ash Vampire. Now, I don't need to defeat this Ash Vampire to get Keening. As you can see, I just take this side passage to avoid the line of sight of the Golden Saint and go up into the tower, and that's where Keening is located. But I thought maybe the item that this Ash Vampire drops could be useful. I wind up kiting this Ash Vampire through the stronghold a little bit awkwardly, but he winds up getting stuck in a door, which helps a lot because I could just take a step back and get my fatigue back, and then run back in to fight. I eventually realized also that I could stand sort of at the corner of the door, and then I could swing at him, but he could not swing at me. And that made the fight extremely easy, because this one kept one-shotting me. With 2 out of 3 of Kagernak's tools in hand, the third being Wraithguard, and unfortunately we don't have access to Wraithguard, so we're going to have to deal with that. I'll go a little bit more into that in a minute. Dashing through Dagoth-Ur, the citadel, not the entity, I clear out a tower to use as sort of a resting spot. There's an Ascended Sleeper in here, so it's more of the same. Go into the area, wait for them to start casting the spell, leave the area, repeat until they're out of magicka, and then beat them up. Once we have a little bit of a foothold in here, I always have a safe place to rest as long as I can make it back to the tower. I can venture out a little bit more. I find a very good shield on a body. This Blood Feet shield this Blood Feet shield is actually pretty necessary to my plan because I don't have a very good way to heal. I have Hearth Heal, but it has a failure chance. This Blood Feet shield lets me cast an absorb health spell on a target. And believe it or not, the Heart of Lorkhan is a valid target for absorb. So we move on, fighting more Ascended Sleepers, fighting one last Ash Vampire that surprised me. I didn't actually know it was here. But it drops a ring that could be useful with a Fortify Health effect on it. And finally, I'm in the chamber with Dagoth-Ur himself. I don't waste any time, I just start fighting him. Unfortunately, his spell, whatever element damage it deals, the damage tick is high enough to just drop me if I get hit by the spell. So to counteract that, I can use the Absorb Health Shield once or twice. I need to save most of my charges for the next room, but it does keep me alive. And I also rely on Circle Strafing. I stick myself to his right side, and I move around him. This kind of messes with the targeting for him, and he misses most of his spells. My Bound Mace is also doing a surprising amount of damage. Upon defeating Dagoth-Ur, we have to move into the next room, where Dagoth-Ur himself is invulnerable, and we have to destroy the heart. I'm just trying to get past Dagoth-Ur so I can have him fall onto the bridge, or run down to me, or I can teleport him when I get close to the heart. It's best to have him teleport near you the first time you approach the heart. That way he is in a location that you can sort of jump out of the way of his spell. And then cast Levitate and trick him into falling off of the bridge. Also, you might notice the video quality changed a little bit. Most of this video I did on stream. However, it failed to capture when I actually beat the challenge. So I just loaded an earlier save and did it again. Here I was getting problems where I sort of waited too long, so Dagoth-Ur had actually made his way to the bridge. Then I lured him off of the bridge, and when I approached the heart again, he teleported back to the bridge one more time. I had to reload those attempts, and I couldn't really figure out what was going on for the first 2 or 3 times, and then I actually saw Dagoth-Ur approaching, and I realized that I just needed to run up to the heart, and then run back. and use Levitate to bait Dagoth into falling into the lava. But once Dagoth is in the lava, this is where the fun begins. You see, I mentioned we only have 2 of 3 of Kagernak's tools. Sunder and Keening are the weapons, and Wraithguard is a protective glove that prevents the intense magic contained within these weapons from destroying the wielder. When you have Keening or Sunder equipped for a certain amount of time, it will deal a mortal wound to the character. Now, the actual range for this damage is 50 damage to 125 damage. There was an explicit reason I chose to start as a Nord with Strength and Endurance as my favorite attributes, as well as being born under the sign of the Lady. I need to have as much health as possible, because I can survive a mortal wound if the mortal wound rolls very low for its damage. Now, what I can do is just switch weapons. However, the time that the mortal wound has to proc is actually cumulative, meaning, let's just say it takes a second and a half for the mortal wound to proc. I don't know if that's the actual time. I'm just making something up. Let's say I hold Sunder in my hand for half of a second before I switch. That means if I switch back to Sunder for another half of a second, nothing would happen. But the game would remember that I've held Sunder for a total of 1 second. So if I switch over to Keening, and I have Keening in my hand for half a second again, my character would take the mortal wound damage, and I will most likely die. Because I need to strike the heart 1 time with Sunder, and then 5 times with Keening. I need to be very careful about how I proc the mortal wound, and I need to pay attention to my health. I mean, if I die, I'm dead. Who cares? But if I live, I can switch to my Blood Feet shield and cast Absorb Health on the heart, go back up to full health, and then I can use the tools again. This is extremely save scummy, I know. But at level 1, I don't really have any other options. But eventually everything goes in our favor, and success. The heart of Lorcan is destroyed, and Akula Khan dies with it. All of Nirn is saved, and it's all thanks to us. The totally Nerevarine and Hortator. We didn't do any of this. Who are those people? Anyway, Azura gives us a cool ring, and we're done. I don't know how to end this video because I don't have any sponsors. I don't have a Patreon or anything like that. I just have the channel. I guess just subscribe. This is a little bit different than the content I usually do. I usually do RuneScape, but I need to start putting those videos out every other week, so I need something to fill the time. And I've been streaming Morrowind, so I figured this would be pretty fun. Let me know if you liked this. I'll do more of these. There's a lot of people around that do videos like this all the time. A few years ago, it was Mitten Squad. Rest in peace. Lately, I've been watching Just Background Noise do videos like this. Great channel. But yeah, I enjoyed making this video, and if you enjoyed, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe, tell me about it in the comments, all that good stuff. But I'll see you next time then. Goodbye.